Hi all. In the light of the lack of publicity in the media generally for the upcoming World Chess Championship, I thought I should actually do a gentle introduction to how to play the game in an effort that these videos on YouTube might create greater publicity and understanding of the game from the general public. So I don't know how many videos this will need on YouTube, but I want this to be an assumptionless introduction to the game. So by that, I want to take it very easy to explain how the pieces move, the special moves of chess, a basic, set of games to try and understand the very basics of tactics and strategy. So here is the chessboard, and the white pieces, conventionally, there's a white square top left. So this is how you set the pieces up. So the rook, the knight, the bishop, the queen, the king. And you'll notice that the bishops, they're on two different colours of square. The queen always sits on the same colour as itself. So the white queen is always sitting on a white square, the black queen on a black square. And if you have the board set up with coordinates, it's best for recording the game for A to H to be at the bottom and 1 to 8 to be vertical. So when you record a game actually with a chess score sheet, say you played this move, could record it in long notation, E2 to E4, or there's something called algebraic notation, so it would just be E4. But as I say, this is an assumptionless introduction, so what I'm going to do next is start to look at each of the pieces in turn. So to do this effectively, let's clear the board now. So okay, so imagine this position, and I just want to actually demonstrate the movements. So these aren't the best moves, this is just to demonstrate the rook movements. So the rooks are one of the simplest pieces to understand. They just go across or up. So the white rook here can go there, 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 there. So it can go like this, or it can go like this, across, or it can go down. And the black rook, it has exactly the same powers. And one special move, well, involving the king, the object of the game in chess is to checkmate the opponent's king. And each of these moves wouldn't be accompanied with any special exclamation when you played them, except for rook A8. If you played rook A8, you'd say check, because you're checking the opponent's king. So those are the rooks. So I'll just move a fictional game from this position, just to show you the rooks moving around. And let's take another aspect of rooks. If you leave your rook where it can be captured by the opponent's rook, then that would be silly. So you'd lose that rook and you'd probably lose the game. So basically those are rooks. Let's look now at how knights operate. Okay, knights, they move in an L shape. So the white knight can move in this kind of L shape. So it's 2 squares forward and 1 across. So 2 squares 1, 2 squares 1, 2 squares 1. So let's have some knight movements. It's black to move here, so an example set of knight movements from both sides. So you see they move in that L shape. And one of the peculiarities of the knights is that they can jump over pieces. They're the only piece that can do that. So let's have a look at a slightly different position now, with the knight jumping over some pieces. In this fictional position, the white knight can basically go to c4. It can jump over these pawns. It can go to a4. The black knight can do the same. So that's the peculiarity of the knights. They're the tricky pieces, the drunken pieces of the chessboard. In fact, there's even a chess club called Drunken Knights in London, believe it or not. So the knights. Now let's look at the bishops. So the bishops move in straight lines like the rooks, but they're diagonal. So instead of moving up and down like the rooks, they're moving diagonally. So the white bishop could move like this. In fact, in this position, because it's regarded as insufficient material for either side to win, let's stick a pawn on for both sides. So I just want to demonstrate the bishop movement. So they're diagonally moving pieces. Actually, it's check here, so the king has to get out of that check from the bishop. It's a legal move. And say there was check, black to move, check. So we see that the bishops, they move diagonally. Let's just move them around a bit. And of course they can capture pieces as well. So say that pawn was on pre, could be taken. So those are the bishops. Now let's move on to the all-powerful queen, which can move in all directions. So the queen can move not only across but diagonally. So basically it's like the powers of the rook and bishop combined. So I could move the queen there, black could move here, check, check. You could carry on checking the black king here. But for the purposes of just demonstrating the piece movement, I'm just going to move the queens around a little bit. So you see that they're just moving in all directions. I'll leave the queen and pre now with queen h5 blunder. Queen takes h5. So let's move on to the kings. To do that, I'll just snap off that queen with the king, taking the queen. So the kings just move in all directions and one square. The object of the game is to checkmate the opponent's king. Here there's not sufficient material for either side to mate. Okay, so from the queen, let's move on to the humble pawns, which there are 8 of. Okay, the pawns, in their initial square, they can move either 2 squares or 1 square. I think originally in chess the rules that they could only move 1 square, but to make the game more interesting, they later moved 2. So a pawn could move 2 on its first square, or 1. 1 or 2. 1 or 2. Now there's some special pawn moves unique to them. For example, if the pawn came to the 5th rank and then an opposing pawn moved up 2 squares, utilizing that latest rule which was later in the evolution of chess of moving 2 squares, this pawn can actually take that pawn en passant, like this. So that's a special type of pawn capture. So let's see that again in action. If this pawn came to the 5th rank, and now white played 2 pawns forward, then en passant again. So that's special to pawns. Pawns also can be blocked. So basically, that pawn can be blocked now with white playing d4. Both of these pawns are blocking each other. The only way that that d pawn can move forward is if this blockading pawn is removed in some way. So say c4, then the black pawn takes. Not that white would want to do this, but now the pawn's free to move again. Another feature of pawns is when they reach the 8th rank, something special happens to them. So let's have a look at this fictional sequence. When it reaches the 8th rank, you have pawn promotion options. You can either promote to a queen, a rook, a bishop, or knight. And usually you'd want to promote to a queen, but in some cases it might actually stalemate the opponent, so it makes sense to choose your promotions carefully in certain types of positions. Like with a lot of things in chess, it really depends on the position what exactly you want to do. So that range of options of under promoting once you reach the 8th rank might be useful. So under promote to a rook, or under promote to a bishop, or under promote to a knight. So those are the pawns, 8 of them from both sides. So let's go back to the game setup. So both sides, we've covered a very brief overview in this very first video I want to do on this series of how the pieces operate. I think I've covered most of the moves. In the next video we'll look at the castling move, so castling queenside and kingside. But that's enough for the moment. Please leave your comments on YouTube and how I could have made any assumptions clearer. I don't want to make too many assumptions in this particular set of videos. Thanks very much.